What is method overloading?
I personally love method overloading. What's your opinion here?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, because I've made 20 copies of the same method
Yep.
with just different signatures. So when we overload a method,
It can be a very beautiful thing.
it can be when it's done right. It can also be a nightmare when it's done wrong. So when we overload a method, what we're saying is we're going to create multiple signatures, and I'll get to what that is in a second, for the same method. You know what? Rather than writing one, I want to go look at one.
Okay.
So the quintessential best case example I can come up with is the convert class,
Okay.
right? So if we go back up to our main method here, and we say, let's make an int or something, or string.
And
Yeah, how many? I think it's got 17 overloads on this.
okay.
Go back to our class and pull up, could do a convert dot.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And to int 32. What was I? Yeah, so go to int 32.
Mm-hmm.
How many overloads does this have?
Okay. Here we are.
Yeah.
So we have objects, bool, character, by short.
So just pause here for a second. So we can see here, this is the same method written over and over and over and over again, but it has different input parameters, and it can even have a different return type.
Yeah. In fact, look, it actually highlights them all because they're all exactly the same.
Right. So if we go back to our program CS, when we do our open parenthesis there, and it'll give us our little IntelliSense window, 19. There are
There you
19 different overloads for this one method. So we can pass it a bool, we can pass it an int, we can pass it a string, we can pass it a byte, we can pass it a date time, whatever it is, and it will do its best to convert it to a 32-bit integer.
Yep.
Each one of these methods, of these 19 methods, needed to have special logic written for how to handle that particular data type.
So yeah, now, if you could tell, since I put a decimal or decimal in there, it already chose 5 of the 19. So it already chose the actual overload that pulls the decimal in.
That is ironic that you chose 5M and it went to the 5th
Yeah,
overload.
very
There's no connection between the two. So then we can write our own. So let's say we want a method, and I'll show you the example where I think I see it most often in my own code. If we make a method that takes a string, and it really doesn't matter what it is for today's purpose,
Yeah.
and let's just say it takes a string of value.
Okay.
And then on the very next line 18 there, let's write this whole method again. But this time, let's give it another parameter of a Boolean at the end. So we don't even have to have the same number of arguments. As long as the compiler can tell which one you're trying to call out based on the parameters that you've passed, it will know which one is the correct one to call out. Yep, and since we're in a static method, it will have to be static as well. Good call.
Okay.
Yep, and you see now there's two of them.
There's two, and we have a string and a string bool.
Yeah, but anytime you see those up-down arrows, that's the key to tell you that they've created an overload, whoever you're calling.
Yep.
So since you've only passed it an empty string, it knows it's got to go to the one on line 17.
Yes.
If you passed it an additional Boolean, then it would know it had to go to the one on line 22.
Yes.
So it's the parameters and the data type of the parameters that cause it to differentiate. Never the value of the variables. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so yeah, these could be either different values or exactly.
And as long as the variables, the input are different, We can even return change the return type. So if we want to make that second one not a void, if we want to have it return a string, we can do that. And it works just fine.
Now, the thing you can't do is this. So let's say, okay, and I've seen this where let's change this to an int, right? And you want to add an age and you want to get something back, and then you're like, oh, okay, but I want an overload, and I wanted to give it, I don't know, their batting stats. I have no idea. I'm just trying to find another int.
Salary.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, salary. That's a good one.
For the non-baseball people.
Yeah. But this will not work even though, because it's the actual signature of it. That
it's
is
the
thing.
data
It's
type
the
that
ints.
matters.
So you could change this to a decimal and be fine, which would go better with our salary. But just because the names do not matter at all in an overload.
Yeah. Now we can get into some more complicated examples if you want to.
Yeah, let's do it.
So let's make another one.
Okay.
Let's go back to the one we had before with the string.
Yep.
Now, after the string, let's make another parameter
Okay.
of Boolean.
Bool.
Bool, yeah.
Okay.
Call it value 3.
Sorry, you threw me with the Boolean in there.
Been doing too much TypeScript. And let's make it an optional parameter. Let's say it's equal
Okay.
to false. This is where it starts to get weird. So, because if you included the optional value, it wouldn't have a way to differentiate between the one on line 17 and the one on line 28. So even though the signatures are technically different, it fails. And you see
Okay.
there's a squiggly there on line 28.
Yep.
Where it's going to tell you that it already conflicts. So when they start throwing in overloading and optional parameters, and somebody gets out of control and starts making a whole bunch of methods, I mean, this one's pretty easy to spot, but sometimes they can get a little more difficult.
And not to go even more crazy, I hear this a lot with other O words. So what is the difference between overloading and overwriting and stuff like that?
Yes, and I've slipped myself and said the wrong one.
Right.
So we'll talk about overloading a method versus overwriting a method. And they are in no way related at all, despite the fact they sound almost identical.
Right.
When we overload it, we're creating multiple signatures. We're repeating that method multiple times with different parameters, and that's what we're talking about today.
Yep.
Overwriting has to do with inheritance, where we're replacing a method with another method with different logic altogether. So they're not in any way related, so just be careful. If they
Yep.
say an O word, make sure we're talking about overloading.
And you'll hear that a lot in interviews where they will put sometimes
You think they're trying to trip you up?
they're trying to say what's the difference between this and this, and there really is nothing. They're like apples and oranges, but they both kind of rhyme, or like they both start with. I'm trying to think of some good examples, but I can't think of any. But you'll see that.
What's the
lot.
difference between integers and iteration?
Yes,
Like, absolutely
something
nothing.
exactly
Yeah,
like
that's it.
that. So just be careful with that.
Thank you for watching that video from F12 Programming. Please remember to like and subscribe. That does so much for us in the ratings. You have no idea. Also, don't forget to comment below. I hope you enjoyed, and good luck coding.